The bridge of the horizon's edge hummed with quiet activity as Captain Jake Morrison studied the holographic display floating before his command chair. The star system they had entered 3 days ago held more mysteries than any previous expedition, and each passing hour brought new questions that demanded answers. The third planet in the system pulsed with energy signatures that made no sense according to current scientific understanding, yet the readings were unmistakable. Dr. Lisa Shang adjusted her scanner for the 100th time that morning, her dark eyes focused on the cascading data streams that flowed across her workstation. As the ship's lead xenorchaeologist, she had seen plenty of unusual readings during their deep space missions, but nothing quite like this. The energy patterns seemed to follow mathematical sequences that were both alien and strangely familiar, as if they were looking at a puzzle designed by a mind that thought in ways similar to humans but with capabilities far beyond anything Earth had ever achieved. "Captain, I'm reading massive structural formations on the planet's surface," Chang announced, her voice carrying the excitement that came with genuine discovery. "These aren't natural formations. Someone built them, and they're big enough to house entire cities." Chief Engineer Pete Rodriguez looked up from his console where he had been monitoring the ship's power systems. The readings from the planet below were causing minor fluctuations in their own equipment, something that shouldn't have been possible at this distance. "Whatever's down there is still active," he said, running his hands through his graying hair. "I'm detecting power signatures that dwarf anything we've seen before." Communications Officer Amy Sullivan turned in her chair, her blonde hair catching the bridge lights as she faced the captain. "Sir, I've been monitoring all frequencies, and there's definitely something transmitting from the surface. It's not directed at us, but it's there. The patterns are complex, almost like a language, but unlike anything in our databases." Security Chief Tony Washington stood near the tactical display, his massive frame tense with the wariness that came from years of protecting crews in dangerous situations. The readings they were getting suggested technology that could easily destroy their ship without effort, and that made him nervous. "Captain, we should proceed with extreme caution. Whatever built those structures had technology that makes ours look primitive." Morrison nodded slowly, understanding his crew's concerns, while feeling the pull of discovery that had driven humans to explore since the beginning of time. "What do our alien crew members think about all this?" The question brought immediate tension to the bridge. Their Cathani liaison, Zexler, had been unusually quiet since they had entered the system. The tall insectoid being stood near the navigation console, his forearms wrapped around his torso in what humans had learned was a defensive posture among his species. "Captain Morrison," Zexler said, his translated voice carrying undertones of fear that the universal translator couldn't quite mask. "My people have legends about places like this. We call them the Forbidden Zones, places where the ancients once dwelled. No civilized species approaches such locations." Navigation Officer Ben Carter looked up from his star charts, his young face showing confusion. "The ancients? I've heard other species mention them, but no one ever explains who they were." Zexler's compound eyes seemed to darken, and his breathing became more rapid. "They were the ones who came before all others. Beings of immense power who could reshape worlds with their thoughts and bend the very fabric of space to their will. Every species in the galaxy has stories of them, and all of those stories end the same way. They vanished, leaving behind only their terrible works and the warning that some things should never be disturbed." Dr. Chang leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding the growing atmosphere of dread. "But surely they were just another species with advanced technology. Every civilization seems primitive compared to those who came before." "No," Zexler said, his voice dropping to what humans might have recognized as a whisper. "The ancients were different. They didn't just have advanced technology. They were technology. They could appear anywhere in the galaxy without ships, create or destroy matter with gestures, and their very presence could drive lesser beings to madness. My people's oldest records speak of the day they came to our world, how they changed our sun to burn more gently so we would not perish in the coming solar storms. They saved us, but we never forgot the terror of being in the presence of beings who could unmake reality itself. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Morrison felt the weight of command pressing down on him as he considered their options. The discovery of an ancient site would be the greatest archaeological find in galactic history, but it would also be the most dangerous. "Captain," Rodriguez said quietly, "the energy readings are getting stronger. Whatever's down there is responding to our presence." Morrison stood and walked to the main view screen, where the planet hung like a jewel against the star field. Somewhere on its surface lay structures built by beings that had become legends of terror throughout the galaxy. The smart choice would be to mark the location and return with a larger expedition, but Morrison knew that opportunity like this might never come again. "Sir," Sullivan said, her voice tight with concern, "I'm detecting what might be a scanning beam directed at our ship. Something down there knows we're here." The captain turned to face his crew, seeing the mixture of fear and excitement that came with standing on the threshold of the unknown. "All right, people, we came out here to explore and make discoveries. This is what we signed up for." He paused, looking at each of them in turn. "But I want everyone to understand the risks. If the legends are true, we're about to encounter technology that could destroy us without effort." Zexter made a sound that the translator rendered as distress. "Captain, I must strongly advise against this course of action." The ancients left. "Their works as warnings, not invitations." Morrison considered the alien's words, then looked back at the planet. "Prepare an away team. We're going down." The shuttle bay doors closed with a soft hiss as Captain Morrison led his away team toward the waiting transport vessel. The small craft would carry them down to the planet's surface, where the massive ancient structure waited like a sleeping giant. Dr. Chang checked her equipment one final time, ensuring that all her scanning devices were functioning properly. While Chief Rodriguez ran through the shuttle systems with practiced efficiency, Amy Sullivan adjusted her communication gear, establishing a secure link with the horizon's edge before they departed. The connection would allow them to maintain contact with the ship during their exploration, though everyone knew that ancient technology might interfere with their communications in ways they couldn't predict. Tony Washington performed a final weapons check. Though he understood that conventional arms would be useless against beings capable of reshaping reality itself, Ben Carter took the pilot's seat, his hands steady on the controls despite the nervous energy that filled the shuttle. The young officer had flown through asteroid fields and nebular storms, but approaching an ancient site felt different from any danger he had previously faced. Behind him, Zexler remained silent, his forearms wrapped tightly around his torso in a gesture that spoke of deep anxiety. "Remember, everyone," Morrison said as they prepared for launch, "we're here to observe and learn, not to disturb anything unnecessarily. If we encounter active systems, we document them but don't interact unless absolutely necessary." The shuttle dropped away from the horizon's edge and began its descent toward the planet below. As they broke through the atmosphere, the true scale of the ancient structure became apparent. The facility stretched across dozens of kilometers, its dark metal surfaces reflecting the system's star in patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Towers rose from the main complex like spears thrust into the sky, their surfaces covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "My God," Chang whispered, her voice barely audible over the shuttle's engines. "It's beautiful and terrifying at the same time." Carter guided the shuttle toward what appeared to be a landing area near the facility's main entrance. As they approached, lights began to activate along the structure's surface, creating pathways of illumination that seemed to guide them toward their destination. The display was both welcoming and ominous, as if the facility itself was aware of their presence and responding accordingly. Rodriguez watched his instruments with growing concern. "The power readings are off the charts. Whatever's running this place has been active for who knows how long, and it's not showing any signs of decay or failure." The shuttle touched down on a platform that seemed to have been designed specifically for their arrival. The surface was smooth and unblemished, showing no signs of age despite the facility's obvious antiquity. As the engines wound down, the team prepared to disembark into an environment that might hold secrets older than galactic civilization itself. Morrison opened the shuttle's hatch, and they stepped out into air that tasted clean and fresh, despite the fact that they were supposedly exploring a ruin that had been abandoned for millennia. The gravity felt normal, and the atmospheric readings showed a perfect balance of gases that humans could breathe without assistance. It was as if the facility had been maintained specifically for their arrival. "This doesn't feel like a ruin," Sullivan observed, her voice echoing slightly in the vast space around them. "Everything looks like it was built yesterday." The main entrance to the facility stood before them, a massive archway that seemed to pulse with inner light. The opening was perfectly sized for human proportions, neither too tall nor too wide, as if the builders had designed it with beings exactly like them in mind. Strange symbols covered the archway surface, but they seemed less alien than expected. Following patterns that felt almost familiar, Zexter had remained near the shuttle, his entire body language speaking of barely controlled terror. The stories speak of how the ancients' works would respond to the presence of living beings. This place knows we are here. Dr. Chang approached the entrance with her scanner active, recording everything for later analysis. The symbols appear to be some form of writing system, but the mathematical principles behind them are surprisingly similar to human logic patterns. It's almost as if whoever built this thought in ways that we can understand. As they moved closer to the entrance, subtle changes began to occur throughout the facility. Lights brightened along pathways that led deeper into the structure, and a low harmonic sound began to emanate from somewhere within. The sound wasn't threatening, but it suggested vast machinery awakening after a long sleep. Washington kept his weapon ready, though he knew it would be useless against ancient technology. "Something's happening. The whole place is coming alive." Carter noticed that the control panels visible through the entrance seemed to be positioned at exactly the right height for human hands to operate them comfortably. The design philosophy behind the facility felt strangely familiar, as if human engineers had been involved in its construction. "Captain," Rodriguez said, his voice tight with concentration as he studied his readings, "I'm detecting massive energy build-ups throughout the facility. It's not hostile, but something big is powering up." Morrison stood before the entrance, feeling the weight of decision. Every instinct told him that crossing the threshold would change everything, not just for his crew, but possibly for humanity itself. The facility seemed to be waiting for them, its systems awakening in response to their presence. "The architectural style," Chung said suddenly, her scientific training overriding her natural caution. "Look at the proportions, the way the spaces are designed. This place was built for beings almost exactly like us." The realization struck them all at the same moment. The dreaded ancients, the beings that every species in the galaxy feared and whispered about, had built their facility to human specifications. The doorways, the control surfaces, even the aesthetic choices all suggested builders who thought and moved like humans. "That's impossible," Sullivan whispered. But her voice carried doubt rather than certainty. Morrison stepped forward, his hand reaching toward the entrance. "Only one way to find out?" As his fingers touched the threshold, the facility's systems fully awakened, and a voice spoke from hidden speakers throughout the complex. The voice was clear, warm, and spoke in perfect English. "Welcome home." The words "Welcome home" echoed through the massive entrance hall as the away team stood frozen in shock. The voice that had spoken was unmistakably human, warm and familiar in a way that made no sense given their location. Dr. Chang's scanner trembled in her hands as she tried to process what she was hearing, while Tony Washington's grip tightened on his weapon despite knowing it would be useless against whatever technology surrounded them. "That's impossible," Amy Sullivan whispered, her communication equipment crackling with interference from the facility's awakening systems. "No human has ever been to this star system before." Captain Morrison stepped further into the entrance hall, his boots echoing on floors that seemed to be made of a material that was both metal and something else entirely. The surfaces around them pulsed with soft light that reminded him of the bioluminescent creatures found in Earth's deep oceans, but the patterns were clearly artificial and purposeful. "I am Arya," the voice continued, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Automated Research Intelligence Assistant, stationed at Research Facility Eco 7. I have been waiting for human personnel to return for approximately 50,000 years. Ben Carter moved closer to one of the wall panels, studying the symbols that covered its surface. Up close, he could see that what had appeared to be alien writing was actually a highly evolved form of human mathematics. And language, compressed and stylized, but still recognizable to anyone with advanced education. 50,000 years, Pete Rodriguez repeated, his engineering mind trying to grasp the implications. That would place this facility's construction during Earth's last ice age, when humans were still using stone tools. Zexler remained near. The entrance, his forearms wrapped around his body in terror. The voice speaks the human language as if it were natural. The ancients were not supposed to be like you. They were supposed to be something else, something beyond understanding. Dr. Chang approached one of the control panels, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. As she drew near, the panel activated automatically, displaying information in what appeared to be English text mixed with mathematical symbols that followed human logic patterns. "Captain, these readouts are showing facility status reports. Everything is written in languages and number systems that humans developed." "Arya," Morrison said, addressing the invisible presence that surrounded them. "You said you've been waiting for humans to return. Return from where?" The facility's lights brightened slightly, and holographic displays began to materialize throughout the hall. The images showed star charts, planetary systems, and what appeared to be a vast network of installations spread across the galaxy. At the center of it all was a small blue world that every human recognized immediately. "From Earth," Arya replied, her voice carrying what sounded like relief. "The human homeworld where the species originated before beginning their expansion." Across the galaxy, Research Facility Eco 7 was established during the third expansion phase, approximately 51,000 years ago, to study the long-term effects of stellar manipulation on developing solar systems. Sullivan's communication equipment suddenly cleared, and she found herself receiving data streams directly from the facility's systems. The information was complex but presented in formats that human minds could process naturally. "Captain, I'm getting historical records, personnel files, research data. All of it is human in origin." The holographic displays shifted to show images of humans working within the facility, but these were not the humans of Earth's current era. They wore clothing that seemed to be made of light itself, and their movements suggested comfort with technologies that defied current understanding of physics. Yet they were unmistakably human in appearance, with the same basic physical structure and facial features. The research staff of Eco 7 consisted of 237 human personnel, Arya continued. They were part of the Galactic Research Initiative, established to monitor and guide the development of younger species while preventing interference with natural evolutionary processes. Washington studied the weapon systems that were becoming visible as the facility fully activated. The designs were elegant and clearly human in origin, but their capabilities seemed to exceed anything in current military arsenals. These weapons, they're designed for human hands and human reflexes. Carter had found a navigation console, and the star charts it displayed showed familiar constellations viewed from perspectives that no human had ever seen. Yet the way the information was presented followed navigation principles that Earth's space forces had developed over centuries of exploration. "The ancients that every species fears," Rodriguez said slowly. "They were humans. Advanced humans, but humans nonetheless." "Correct," Arya confirmed. The term ancients was applied by younger species who encountered human research teams during their early developmental periods. The temporal displacement between human technological advancement and the Natural development of other species created a perception gap that resulted in the mythological status humans achieved throughout the galaxy. Dr. Chang's scanner was now receiving detailed information about the facility's construction and purpose. Arya, why did the humans leave? What happened to the galactic human civilization? The holographic displays dimmed slightly, and Arya's voice took on a more serious tone. The Great Experiment resulted in temporal anomalies that threatened the stability of local spacetime. The Human Research Network was forced to implement emergency protocols that required the evacuation of all personnel and the shutdown of active research programs. Zexler's breathing had become rapid and shallow. You are telling us that the beings my people have feared for generations, the ones who could reshape worlds and appear anywhere in the galaxy, they were just humans like you. Advanced humans, Morrison corrected, but his voice carried the weight of realization. Humans who had developed technology that made them seem like gods to less advanced species? Sullivan was reviewing communication logs from the facility's archives. Captain, these records show contact with dozens of species throughout the galaxy. The humans weren't conquerors or destroyers. They were teachers and protectors, guiding other species and helping them avoid extinction events. The facilities. Systems continued to activate around them, revealing laboratories, living quarters, and research areas that had been perfectly preserved for millennia. Everything was designed for human use, from the sleeping quarters to the food preparation areas, confirming that the dreaded ancients had been nothing more than humanity's own ancestors. The current human population on Earth represents the descendants of the colonial maintenance staff who remained behind during the Great Evacuation, Arya explained. They were tasked with preserving the species and maintaining minimal technological capability until the temporal anomalies could be resolved. Carter looked up from the navigation console, his face pale with understanding. We're not just discovering an ancient site. We're coming home to a facility that our own species built. The implications hit them all at once. The mysterious ancients that every galactic species whispered about in terror were humans. Advanced humans who had once spread across the galaxy, protecting and guiding younger species before some catastrophe had forced them to abandon their vast civilization. Arya, Morrison said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they had learned. Show us what happened to our people. The holographic displays around them shifted to show a three-dimensional map of the galaxy as it had existed 50,000 years ago. Captain Morrison and his team watched in amazement as thousands of points of light appeared across the star. Systems, each one representing a human installation or colony. The scope of ancient human civilization was staggering, covering nearly two-thirds of the known galaxy. The Human Galactic Republic was the largest and most advanced civilization in galactic history, Arya explained as the display zoomed in on various installations. At its peak, human research stations monitored over 12,000 developing species across 47,000 star systems. Dr. Chang studied the display with growing wonder. How did they manage such a vast territory? The logistics alone would be impossible with current technology. Human scientists had developed instantaneous transportation systems that allowed personnel to travel between any 2 points in the galaxy without regard for distance, Arya responded. Time manipulation technology enabled the acceleration of research projects and the coordination of activities across multiple star systems simultaneously. Amy Sullivan was reviewing communication logs from the ancient human network. Captain, these records show that humans were in contact with the ancestors of every major galactic species. They weren't just observers. They were actively helping these species survive and develop. The holographic display changed to show specific examples of human intervention. On one world, ancient humans had moved an entire civilization to a safer planet before their sun went supernova. On another, they had provided medical knowledge that prevented a plague from wiping out an entire species. The scope of their protective activities was enormous. The Kethani homeworld was saved from ecological collapse by Human Research Team 7. Arya continued, causing Zexler to make a sound of distress. Your species' survival was ensured through the introduction of atmospheric processors that restored the planet's oxygen levels after industrial contamination. Zexter's forearms trembled as he processed this information. The great restoration that our histories describe as divine intervention. The beings who saved our world were humans like you. Ben Carter had found records of human contact with dozens of other species. Look at this. The Valdari, the Centauri Federation, the Hive Collective, all of them have records of contact with the ancients. All of them were helped by humans. Pete Rodriguez was examining technical specifications for the ancient human technology. The power systems alone are beyond anything we understand. They were drawing energy directly from stellar cores and manipulating matter at the quantum level. Human technology had advanced to the point where the distinction between science and what primitive species might call magic became meaningless, Arya explained. The ability to reshape matter, manipulate time, and transport across vast distances was routine for research personnel. Tony Washington studied the military records, finding accounts of humans protecting developing species from various threats. They used their power to defend others, not to conquer them. Every military action was defensive or protective in nature. The holographic displays showed images of ancient humans working alongside alien species, teaching them advanced concepts and helping them solve problems that would have otherwise led to extinction. Yet the humans in these records looked isolated and lonely despite their incredible achievements. Arya, Morrison said, if humans were so advanced and were helping other species, why did they become figures of fear and legend? The AI's response carried a note of sadness. The technological gap between humans and other species was so vast that even acts of kindness appeared godlike to those who received them. Humans could appear anywhere without warning, reshape entire worlds, and solve problems that seemed impossible to lesser species. To the aliens, humans were indistinguishable from divine beings. Dr. Chang found personal logs from ancient human researchers. Listen to this entry from Dr. Elena Vasquez, stationed at Research Post Gamma 9. She writes, "We saved the hegemony from their dying star today, but they fell to their knees in worship instead of thanking us. I miss being able to have a simple conversation with equals. The burden of being seen as gods is becoming unbearable." The team began to understand the true tragedy of the ancient human civilization. Their ancestors had achieved incredible power and used it to protect and guide other species, but in doing so, they had become isolated from the very beings they sought to help. The psychological impact on human personnel was significant, Arya continued. Research teams reported increasing levels of depression and isolation as they found themselves unable to form meaningful relationships with other species. Humans were either feared as potential destroyers or worshipped as divine beings, but never accepted as equals. Sullivan found more personal records. Here's another entry from Commander Alex Chun at Deep Space Station Delta IV, the Torelli. Delegation brought offerings and begged us to become their permanent guardians. They can't understand that we're just people who want to help, not gods who demand worship. Sometimes I wonder if we've made a mistake by advancing so far beyond everyone else. The display showed the final period of human expansion, when research stations began reporting that their personnel were struggling with the loneliness and responsibility of their positions. The ancient humans had become prisoners of their own success. The great experiment was an attempt to bridge the gap between human advancement and the natural development of other species, Arya explained. Human scientists believed they could accelerate the evolution of selected species to create equals who could understand and interact with human civilization. Rodriguez looked up from his technical readings. What went wrong? The temporal manipulation required to accelerate evolution across multiple species simultaneously created cascading anomalies in local spacetime, Arya said. The fabric of reality began to destabilize, threatening not just the experimental subjects but the entire galactic region. The holographic displays showed the final days of the human empire. As emergency protocols were activated and evacuation procedures began, ancient humans made the ultimate sacrifice. using their technology to contain the temporal anomalies while ensuring their own civilization's destruction. They chose to save everyone else, Carter said quietly. The evacuation was successful, Arya confirmed. All human personnel were withdrawn to Earth, and the advanced technology was shut down to prevent further temporal damage. The galaxy was preserved, but at the cost of human galactic civilization. Morrison felt the weight of his species' history settling on his shoulders. And Earth's humans were programmed to forget their galactic heritage and rebuild from a more primitive technological base? Arya replied. It was the only way to ensure that the temporal anomalies would not recur. The away team stood in silence, absorbing the magnitude of what they had learned. Their ancestors had been the galaxy's guardians and protectors, but the price of such power had been unbearable loneliness and ultimate sacrifice. The silence in the facility stretched for long moments as the away team processed the magnitude of their discovery. Captain Morrison stared at the holographic displays showing the locations of hundreds of dormant human installations scattered across the galaxy, each one containing technology that could reshape civilization itself. The weight of choice pressed down on him as he realized that humanity now faced the same decision their ancestors had struggled with millennia ago. Arya, Morrison said finally, what would happen if we reactivated these installations? The AI's response came immediately, as if she had been waiting for this question. Full reactivation would restore human technological capabilities to their previous levels within approximately 6 months. The transportation network could be rebuilt, allowing instantaneous travel between any points in the galaxy. Matter manipulation systems could solve resource scarcity across all inhabited worlds. Time dilation fields could accelerate scientific research by factors of thousands. Dr. Chang moved closer to one of the control panels, her hands hovering over interfaces that seemed to respond to her presence. We could end hunger, disease, and poverty throughout the galaxy. We could prevent wars and guide species toward peaceful coexistence. Just like our ancestors tried to do, Ben Carter said, his voice heavy with understanding. And look how that turned out. Amy Sullivan had been monitoring communications from the horizon's edge, where the remaining crew members were growing increasingly concerned about the away team's extended absence. Captain, the ship is requesting status updates. How do we explain what we found? Tony Washington studied the defensive systems that were still active throughout the facility. More importantly, how do we explain this to the galactic community? Every species in known space has built their entire worldview around fearing the ancients. Learning that we're their descendants is going to cause panic. Pete Rodriguez was deep in the technical specifications of the ancient human technology. The power systems alone would revolutionize galactic civilization. We could provide clean energy to every world, terraform dead planets, and extend the lifespan of dying stars. The good we could do is immeasurable. Zexler had been quiet since learning that his people owed their survival to human intervention, but now he spoke up. The Cathani Council will demand immediate subjugation to human authority once they learn the truth. They will expect you to resume the role of our protectors and guides. That's exactly the problem, Morrison said. Our ancestors became isolated because other species couldn't see them as equals. They were either feared as destroyers or worshipped as gods, but never accepted as friends. Arya's voice carried a note of concern. Captain, I must inform you that several galactic intelligence services have begun investigating the energy signatures emanating from this facility. Your presence here has not gone unnoticed. The implications hit them immediately. If other species discovered the truth about the ancients before humanity could decide how to handle the revelation, the results could be catastrophic. Some species might attack Earth preemptively, while others might immediately surrender and demand human protection. How long do we have before they arrive? Morrison asked. Approximately 72 hours before the first investigation ships reach this system, Arya replied. However, I can activate defensive systems that would prevent any approach to the facility. Carter looked up from the navigation console where he had been studying the ancient human star charts. Captain, if we activate the defensive systems, we're essentially announcing to the galaxy that we're connected to the ancients. There's no going back from that. Dr. Chang had found personal logs from the final days of the human empire. Listen to this entry from Director Sarah Martinez at Command Central. We've spent 50,000 years trying to help other species grow and develop, but we've only succeeded in creating dependence. They look to us for solutions instead of finding their own. We've become a crutch that prevents them from reaching their full potential. The team began to understand the deeper tragedy of their ancestors' situation. The ancient humans hadn't just been lonely because of their power. They had realized that their very presence was preventing other species from developing their own capabilities and independence. There's another consideration, Washington said grimly. If we restore human galactic civilization, what happens to the current political structures? The Galactic Council, the various federations and alliances, they'll all become meaningless if humans reclaim their historical role. Sullivan found communication records from the evacuation period. The ancient humans knew this would happen eventually. They left detailed protocols for contact with their descendants, including warnings about the dangers of rapid technological advancement. Rodriguez had discovered manufacturing systems that could produce ancient human technology. Aria could. We selectively activate certain technologies without fully restoring the galactic network. Yes, the AI replied. The installations can be activated individually or in small groups. This would allow for gradual integration of human technology without triggering the complete transformation that occurred during the original expansion. Morrison felt the weight of decision crushing down on him. What would you recommend, Arya? You've observed human civilization for 50,000 years. What would be the best course of action? The AI was quiet for a long moment before responding. The original human leadership faced this same choice, Captain. They could have maintained their empire and continued to guide other species, or they could step back and allow natural development to continue. They chose to sacrifice their civilization for the greater good, but the galaxy needs guidance, Chang argued. Species are still fighting wars, destroying their environments, and facing extinction events that human technology could prevent. The question is whether we help them by solving their problems for them, or by teaching them to solve problems themselves, Carter said. Our ancestors learned that doing everything for other species doesn't actually help them grow. Zexler's voice carried a note of desperation. But without human protection, my people and countless others will face challenges that we cannot overcome alone. The galaxy needs the ancients to return. No, Morrison said firmly. The galaxy needs to learn that the ancients were never gods or demons. They were just people who chose to help others, and we need to find a way to continue that tradition without repeating their mistakes. The captain looked at each of his team members, seeing the same mixture of hope and fear in their eyes that he felt in his own heart. Arya, show us the protocols for limited activation. We're going to find a middle path. Captain Morrison stood before the main control console of Research Facility Eco 7, his hand resting on the activation panel that could change the course of galactic history. The weight of 50,000 years of human legacy pressed down on him as he considered the choice that would define humanity's future relationship with the galaxy. Behind him, his team waited in tense silence, each understanding that their decision would affect billions of lives across countless worlds. Arya, Morrison said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment, initiate the limited activation. Protocol, we're going to do this differently than our ancestors did. The facility systems hummed to life as Arya began the careful process of selective activation. Instead of bringing the entire galactic network online at once, she activated only essential systems that would allow for gradual integration of human technology into the current galactic community. Protocol initiated, Arya announced. Activating communication systems, basic defensive shields, and educational databases. The full manufacturing and transportation networks will remain dormant until further authorization. Dr. Chang watched as holographic displays showed the careful awakening of systems across the galaxy. We're not restoring the empire. We're just opening the door for humanity to take its rightful place as equals, not rulers. The first test came sooner than expected. Long-range sensors detected the approach of several alien vessels, their configurations matching the intelligence services that Arya had warned them about. The lead ship transmitted a demand for identification and explanation of the energy signatures coming from the planet. "Captain," Amy Sullivan said, monitoring the communications, "it's a joint investigation fleet. Cathani Valdari and Centauri vessels. They're requesting permission to approach the facility." Morrison looked at Zexler, who had been quiet since learning of his people's connection to the ancient humans. "What will your people do when they learn the truth?" The alien liaison's forearms trembled slightly. "They will be terrified at first, then grateful, then confused. The Cathani have spent generations building our identity around the memory of the ancients who saved us. Learning that they were humans like you will challenge everything we believe about our place in the galaxy. Then we'll help them understand," Morrison said. "Arya, open a communication channel to the approaching fleet." The main display activated, showing the bridge of the lead Cathani vessel. Commander Thexville, a senior officer whom Morrison had worked with before, appeared on screen. His compound eyes widened as he recognized the human captain. "Captain Morrison, we detected massive energy signatures from your location. Are you in danger? Do you require assistance?" Morrison took a deep breath, knowing that his next words would begin a new chapter in galactic history. "Commander, we're safe, but we've made a discovery that will change everything. The facility we're in was built by the ancients." The alien commander's reaction was immediate and predictable. His breathing became rapid, and his arms wrapped around his torso in the defensive posture that indicated extreme stress. "You must evacuate immediately. Ancient sites are forbidden. The danger is too great." "The danger isn't what you think it is," Morrison replied. "Commander, the ancients weren't the mysterious beings that your legends describe. They were humans. Advanced humans from Earth's past, but humans nonetheless." The silence that followed was deafening. On the screen, Commander Thexville seemed to freeze, his alien features showing the same shock that Morrison's own team had experienced hours earlier. "That's impossible," the commander finally whispered. "The ancients were gods. They saved my world. They reshaped our sun? Humans couldn't possibly possess such power." "Our ancestors did," Morrison said gently. "And they used that power to protect and guide other species, including yours. But they paid a terrible price for their advancement. They became isolated from the very beings they sought to help." Then Carter stepped forward, adding his voice to the explanation. "Commander, we're not here to claim dominance or restore an ancient empire. We're here to learn from our ancestors' mistakes and find a better way forward." The communication channel crackled as other voices joined the conversation. The Valdari and Centauri commanders had been listening, and their reactions ranged from disbelief to terror to fascination. "If humans are the descendants of the ancients," the Valdari representative said, "then you have the right to rule the galaxy. Our species owes its existence to human intervention." "No," Morrison said firmly. "That's exactly the attitude that destroyed our ancestors' civilization. They didn't want to be rulers or gods. They wanted to be friends and equals, but other species couldn't see them that way." Pete Rodriguez had been monitoring the facility's systems as they gradually came online. "Captain, I'm detecting similar conversations happening across the galaxy. The activation of our communication systems has triggered automatic broadcasts to other species that the ancient humans had contact with." "Arya," Morrison said, "can you address the galactic community directly?" The AIS voice filled the communication channel, reaching not just the ships outside, but broadcasting to every major population center in the galaxy. "Citizens of the galactic community, I am Arya, representing the Human Galactic Research Initiative. For 50,000 years, you have remembered us as the ancients, beings of immense power who shaped your worlds and guided your development. We were not gods or demons. We were humans, like those who stand before you now." The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, entire civilizations stopped what they were doing to listen to the voice of the ancients speaking directly to them for the first time in millennia. Our ancestors chose to withdraw from galactic affairs not because they were defeated or destroyed, but because they realized that their presence was preventing other species from reaching their full potential. Arya continued, they sacrificed their civilization so that yours could grow and develop independently. Tony Washington monitored the security feed showing the reactions of various species. Some are panicking, others are celebrating, and a few are preparing for war. This is going to be chaotic for a while. That's why we're taking this slowly. Morrison said, we're not restoring the ancient empire. We're offering partnership and cooperation based on equality and mutual respect. Dr. Chang had been working with Arya to prepare educational materials that would help other species understand the truth about the ancients. We're sharing the historical records, the personal logs, and the technical specifications that show how our ancestors lived and worked. No more mysteries, no more legends, just the truth. Commander Thexville's voice carried a note of wonder. Captain, if your people are truly the descendants of those who saved my world, then the Cathani are forever in your debt. No, Morrison replied, you're not in our debt. You're our friends, and friends help each other as equals. That's what our ancestors should have done, and that's what we're going to do now. As the communication ended and the away team prepared to return to the horizon's edge, Morrison felt a sense of completion. They had discovered the truth about humanity's past, learned from their ancestors' mistakes, and chosen a path that honored both their heritage and their future, the galaxy. Would never be the same, but perhaps it would be better. The ancients were no longer mysterious figures of legend. They were remembered as they should have been all along, as humans who chose to help others, even at the cost of their own civilization, and their descendants would carry on that tradition, not as rulers or gods, but as friends and equals in the vast community of galactic civilization.